then I'm going to go live, and it takes about 1 minute for it to go live.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. And today I want us to talk about Drawdown. About 3 years ago, I was just, or maybe a little more, I was really stunned to come across something called Project Drawdown, which was an absolutely wonderful effort to get expertise into actually making calculations about the numbers involved when you attempt the various kinds of interventions that are going to be required to reduce global warming. So they drew a whole bunch of people together and had them get out their calculators, and they came up with some very impressive numbers. And it is, to my mind, the most impressive effort I've ever seen to actually try to estimate what has to be done to reduce global warming and how much each of these different measures that we take might contribute to that. So I've tried to follow that now and then since then, but I haven't really been able to keep up because they're doing a lot of work. So I've called upon my friend David Berman, who's going to straighten me out today. Hello, David.
Hello, Meta.
David is a dentist and a professor of, I don't know, you do things with indigenous health issues. Isn't that right, David?
Yes, it's a course called Indigenous Issues in Health and Healing,
Uh-huh.
which really is about colonialism and decolonization.
Okay. Well, these days, I imagine there's quite a demand for your expertise on those topics. Uh-huh. Okay, thank you for being here because I want to get caught up. What have you and all of my uh, esteemed Drawdown friends in the Toronto area been up to? And do you have plans for working on how to reduce global warming?
We
And if
do,
so, yeah, tell us all
but
about it.
for me, the most important part of what we do is shifting culture. Because if we have the our culture of consumerism and business
Esteemed
as usual.
Drawdown friends in the Toronto area been up to.
Oh, I'm hearing a recording, Meta.
I
It's a
see.
delay.
It's all right now, I think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
I beg your
So,
pardon. I'll
so
edit that out.
yeah,
It's my error.
yeah.
Mhm.
So what I'd like to do, and what we've been doing in our drawdown meetings, which really came from the Pachamama Alliance, which is an organization to support Indigenous land and rights. So it's been our habit to start with an opening of the space, of starting with a moment of reflection. So if you're willing, I'd like to do that.
Sure, whatever your new
So,
traditions are going to be. Good.
yeah, because this is all about the land. If we don't have a healthy earth, we don't have anything.
Mhm.
So I'm going to suggest, just to all our listeners, viewers, if you have access to the floor, if you can put your feet on the floor and actually feel the earth, that is what connects us. We are all connected because we are all of the earth. So if you wouldn't mind just lowering your gaze or closing your eyes and just allow yourself to feel the earth through your feet, that no matter where we are on this planet, we are connected. And allow yourself to take in a breath and feel the air going into your lungs. That's the same air that we all breathe. And acknowledge the land, the earth. This is a living, breathing being. And from an indigenous perspective, it's a sentient, sacred, suffering being upon whose well being we are as dependent as a fetus in the womb. And we are interconnected, interdependent. upon every living organism, from the bacteria of the soil that makes the soil alive, which is also the microbiome of our own bodies that make us alive, to the fish, the worms, the spiders, the insects, the birds, the fish, the animals. We are all related and we are all interdependent upon one another. And I'd also like to acknowledge our relatives, the human two-legged relatives, who for at least 15,000 years in this part of Mother Earth, and Mother Earth is not a metaphor, this part here on the northwest shore of Lake Ontario, or Ontario, which means beautiful water, in Tagaronto, which is an indigenous word that we've changed to Toronto. The people, the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississauga or Mississaugas of the New Credit, who are the current rights holders of this land through Treaty 13. This is also governed by the pre-Indigenous law, the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Covenant, that stipulates that we must only take what we need and leave abundance for the other human and more than human beings with whom we share this land. And with that, I would say all my relations to remind me that I personally am related to everything. So now let's come back here to the circle. So we have now opened our sacred space. And cancel that. And now I'd like to share my screen and show you some nifty things about Drawdown, answering Meta's question. If I can, am I allowed to share my screen here? Yes,
Yeah.
I can. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, can you see the slide there?
Yes, looks good.
Good, okay, I'll open it wide. Come on, open, there we are. Okay, so we're talking about the promise, the method, and our local action in Toronto here. Let's just hear. This is what I was going to have. This is the scene of that for our little opening, because the air we breathe is made by the trees. It's made by the plants. The earth is alive because of the bacteria in the soil, because of the trees, because of the plants. The plants actually, from an indigenous perspective, are elders. They've been around for millions and millions of years before us animals came by. And they have intelligence and wisdom that science is just beginning to catch up with. Here's an interesting thing. This is part of a 30-second video that I won't go through because it's kind of sloppy to get into the YouTube, but the link is at the bottom here. And it shows the red is the carbon. The darker the red, the stronger the carbon. So this is in November 2006, which is 15 years ago, and it has been increasing every year since. But the interesting thing is that if you look at in this same picture in the summer, the red is mostly disappeared because drawdown has occurred, which means the photosynthesis of the northern hemisphere in the summer pulls much of the carbon out of the atmosphere every year. So the earth actually breathes in carbon in the summer and she breathes it out in winter. Breathes in at night, breathes it in during the day and out at night in balance. But we're putting more in to the atmosphere than she can breathe in. So we're out of balance. And I think that's the message of drawdown. So as Meta mentioned, in 2017, this book came out, edited by Paul Hawken, who had a question: is it possible to reverse global warming? Needed to know the answer. So he put together a team of researchers, philosophers, scientists from around the world. And together they went through the peer-reviewed scientific literature and they limited themselves to that. Their methodology was meticulous to make sure there was no double counting. And they mapped, measured, and modeled hundreds of solutions, proven solutions to global warming, to reversing global warming. Because as Paul puts it, slowing it down, mitigating, uh, lessening, adapting is like Thelma and Louise in slow motion. We're still going over the cliff. So we have to change direction. We have to turn this ship around and go back. And so through this analysis, they ranked them from 1 to 80, the top 80 proven solutions to global warming. And together, the answer is yes. Yes, we can reverse global warming. We can reverse climate change. And not only that, but the solutions are already at hand. We don't have to invent new ones, although we will. They're here. We have them. We can scale them up. And they're already in existence. And they're already being acted on. So that's good news. The bad news is we have to do it. So let me push on here. So drawdown means, in this context, it can mean other things. If you look at drawdown on Google, you'll see lots of different applications. But in this case, it means that point where atmospheric CO2 and equivalents start to decrease year by year instead of increasing. And it's up to us when that point is. So we're trying to pull more carbon out of the atmosphere than we're putting in. And so the analysis, the most recent analysis from last year, if you look at the drawdown review, uh, you'll see that we have sources of carbon and carbon sinks. I don't know if you can see my mouse here. Uh, so
I'm
the
not sure what I'm seeing, David.
okay,
Is one side one old and the other side new, or what's the
no. On the
difference
left
between the
are
sides?
all the sources of carbon in the atmosphere. So these are the emissions that we need to reduce. So, for instance, electricity production, 25%. Food and agriculture and land use, 24%. Industry, 21%. Transportation, 14%. Buildings, 6%. And other energy-related emissions. So these are all the emissions we have to bring to zero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On the right, you'll see, I'll move us out of the way here. So the carbon sinks. So the sinks are land sinks. So that's the photosynthesis that I was talking about from the forests, from agriculture, from so many ways. And then the coastal and ocean sinks. So the kelp in the ocean, the phytoplankton in the ocean itself, the water, absorbs a great deal of carbon dioxide, which unfortunately acidifies it, which makes it plays havoc to the shell creatures of the ocean as the shells become weaker and interferes with their reproductive cycles. Nevertheless, much carbon is pulled into the ocean, but there's still almost 60% remains in the atmosphere right now. So that's our challenge.
Now, wait a minute. Is there a possibility of increasing this land sinks?
That's
thing?
right.
It sounds to me as if I don't want to increase the oceans as a sink because it's going to kill the shellfish.
Exactly. So
But
that's where regenerative agriculture comes in.
now, what else? What else do you have?
Reforestation. I'm sorry?
What else do we have as a way of creating sinks other than land now?
Okay. So, well, sinks there are some technologies that are being worked on, like carbon capture through technology, pulling carbon out of uh, um, um, natural gas production, oil production. You know, the oil industry is talking about, which is I think it's unproven, and we can't wait for that. We need to really increase our land sinks a great deal. Coastal sinks now, mangrove swamps, for instance, mangrove forests are a great source of carbon reduction. because
So we
just
could increase the number of mangroves in the
oh
world.
yes, I mean right now we've depleted the soil. If there was a hospital for sick planets, ours would be in intensive care with severe respiratory distress because we've cut out 80% of our lungs.
Yeah.
We've destroyed the mangrove forests for shrimp farming. The mangrove forests are also a source of breeding grounds for fish. So it actually cutting the mangroves for shrimp farming, we also actually deplete the fishing industry.
Well,
Um,
but we just have to pin most of our hope on the land sinks then, increasing those by agriculture and forestry. Is that right?
Agroforestry, uh, reforesting, permaculture. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, that's good. But if we can just, how, I guess I'm interrupting you, but I'm just wondering how much can we expand this 24%? Could we expand it up to 60% or 80%?
I,
How
I
much more does the land become saturated with carbon at a certain point and won't accept
no,
anymore?
the land can never become saturated with carbon. The land depends on carbon. The microorganisms of the soil depend on carbon.
Mhm.
We have depleted the soil of carbon through our agricultural practices, through tilling the land, this 10,000 year mistake of tilling the land. I think we had a session on um, regenerative agriculture, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
But use of cover crops, um, mixing. We've cut down hedgerows for monocultures,
Mhm.
which has really caused havoc to the land itself. So the land is a living organism, just like a forest is an ecosystem. A forest is no more a collection of trees than we are a collection of cells. You know,
Okay. I
so
don't, I'm deflecting you
yeah, no,
from your
that's fine.
planned
That's
talk,
fine. You said you
but I
didn't
am
want me to have
curious.
a slide up for too long,
Yeah. Okay.
so I'll shift it. So the analysis is okay. Reduce the sources, support the sinks, but as importantly, is improve society, fostering equality. Because when there's inequality, it means people do what they need to do to survive, and that will involve cutting down forests, um, slash and burn agriculture, um, violence, wars, all these things that really um, impede our ability to reverse global warming. And so I think even though the reducing sources to zero is absolutely fundamental, but supporting agriculture, forestry, indigenous land use, because we're in on indigenous managed lands, the 80% of endangered species can be found there. So, when indigenous people are talking about land back, they're absolutely right that um, this movement has to be indigenously led. I can't see any other way because they have this knowledge that has been destroyed through colonialism and it needs to be returned.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you a video. I think listen to John Foley, who is the executive director of Project Drawdown. It's a 10-minute video, and I think he'll give you some of the numbers you're seeking.
Hmm.
I'm just going to click on that. Hyperlinks. Oh, that's all right. Okay. Takes a while. Okay. Here we are. So this is session 5 of a 7-part uh, lecture series called Drawdown Learn. If you go to the menu and just look up Drawdown Learn, you'll see this Drawdown 101. So this is number 5, where you pose the different solution areas together.
Mhm.
All right, so now we're going to put it all together and take the climate solutions we talked about and see what we can do to stop climate change when we put them all together. But remember, we started with these three principles. Start by reducing the
We're not
sources
seeing it
directly,
move.
and we're going to
You can't see it move?
No,
Oh, you don't get the video, you just get the sound?
right.
Uh,
Are you clicking? I didn't see you click on that button in the middle.
yes, it did. Yeah, it's playing to me. I see it move. Okay. Okay, so that's why I wanted to meet earlier. Oh, all right. Um, okay, so it'll just be audio then, and
No, I'll
you
tell
won't
you
see the
what.
beautiful
I
picture.
think on mine, if you want to stop your screen sharing, then I can screen share what I
Okay.
organized.
Yeah. Okay.
If I have it, it's
Yeah, you
gonna
should have it. It should be
it's
slide
not
number 8, I think.
uh, no, the slides are there. Now let's see if I can. We're going to have to edit this to get it to. Now, which one does it look like? Is this the
Okay.
one? All right. Now let's see if I can do it.
Okay. See if you
things
can.
to zero. Then we work with nature to support the carbon sinks that
No,
naturally remove CO2
it's
out of
not
the atmosphere.
moving on mine either.
You're not seeing
And
it
maybe even
No.
augment
because I
agricultural
see it on mine.
technologies and maybe even machinery.
Oh,
Well,
because
too
I
bad.
just have the video.
It's just not showing a movement.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I don't think we
Okay,
want to just hear the audio.
Okay.
Can you give us a kind of your impression of what we would be hearing if
Okay. Well, it's talking about just what I just finished saying: improve society, fostering equality for all. And let's hear him talk, and you'll.
I don't want to hear 10 minutes of just talk though.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Okay, so okay, so
Okay, well we can
the
talk
message
about
is it's possible. There are solutions. We're looking at categories of solutions that we're doing in Toronto. Let's
yeah, go ahead and show some of the other slides you have
yeah,
there about
okay.
what
That's
you're
it's
up to.
unfortunate that okay. So I'll go go back to my slides. Okay, full screen. Full screen. Okay. Okay. So let's go here. Let's What's interesting is if you look at the solutions, they address every one of the UN social sustainable development goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from gender
That's remarkable.
equality, health and well-being, hunger, uh, because the message here, and I think this is the key message of Drawdown, is more than the numbers. It is that if we can do the things that we need to do to reverse global warming, we will have a more equitable, more breathable, more socially convivial, um, greener, healthier, happier, and more prosperous society.
Mm-hmm.
That that people complain, oh, but it's going to cost too much. Well, no, actually, the return on investment, even financially, is over 500%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, yes, there's an upfront investment, but the rewards are huge. Now, some of us are old enough to remember the peace dividend when the Soviet Union collapsed and we were going to be able to put all that money out of armaments into social development, and we didn't, of course. So there are definitely some interests that want to keep things the way they are, because even though it's going to save a whole lot of money in the future, it's inconvenient for some in the short term. And so that's where you get this resistance. So our challenge really is to show that this is actually profitable. This is actually sustainable. This is actually regenerative on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't have to. People say, "Oh, but it'll destroy the economy." No, it'll build the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just, yes, the numbers are there. I didn't. I have numbers. I didn't put a lot of slides in there with the
No, I,
numbers.
I had a conversation a week or so ago with a guy named Robert Pollan, who's an economics professor at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. And he has co-authored a book with Noam Chomsky
Mhm.
about the Green Revolution, or green, not that, that's wrong word,
Mhm.
wrong word for it, the New Green Deal and
Right.
the economics of it. And my concern at that point was, and it still is an issue for me, so many of my friends believe that in order to be sustainable, we have to reduce growth, that the economic growth cannot occur.
Right.
And so my conversation was with Pollan was largely about that, because I've always felt, and he in fact indicates strongly, that if we don't have growth, the poorest people in the world are going to be the ones who suffer, and the economies will come to a screeching halt.
Right.
It will be a really hard time. We'll have depressions.
Right.
So, but of course, then the other side of it is, if you believe that you have to have growth, then to many people, that means you then have to be wasting the world's resources. You have to be squandering and cutting down trees and taking all the fish out
Mhm.
of the ocean and
Exactly.
polluting and that sort of thing. That the only way to stop that is by stopping growth. Well, his answer is no, it depends on what you're growing, what
Exactly.
this growth consists of.
Exactly.
And that the change over to a green economy with a Green New Deal, in whatever form it takes in other parts of the world. And that is, by the way, I think quite consistent with this SDG map that you
Mhm.
have right there,
Mhm.
that the new Green Deal would pretty well coincide with what it wouldn't cover everything, but it covers a lot of those 17 points.
Mhm.
And that he says that's going to create a lot of jobs, and it's going to and it's going to be make us more prosperous, not less so.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
at the same time, we will be in a way. I think the word for it is, I hadn't learned this term until I heard it from Doug Saunders in one of his columns, decoupling. That is, the growth of the economy is not will not be linked to the use of resources, or the depletion of our resources.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraged by his analysis.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the end of the story, and so I will be having another conversation later with some people who are connected with the Club of Rome, because if you'll remember back to I think it was even in the 60s, or at least in the
Mhm.
70s. No, it would have been in the 70s, I guess, that the Club of Rome was sort of the outgrowth of the notion that has to be a limit to growth,
That's right.
and that we have to start living more simply and frugally, really.
Mhm.
Well, I think we'll have to change what we consume, but I don't think we'll have to be in hardship. There'll be no hardship necessary because of it, but actually we'll be healthier and stronger as a
Yes.
result.
Yeah.
So
So
some of these
I don't
people
see any
in
contradiction.
connect. I belong to this Canadian Association for the Club of Rome,
Mhm.
and I haven't been to any of their meetings, but they have this conversation a lot about decoupling resource depletion from economic growth, And I don't know what their view is, but I want to have another conversation about that. So anyway, I interrupt your train of thought.
That's fine. I mean, what you're saying is totally consistent with the drawdown analysis. Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, growth has in the business model, the business as usual model, that the growth has been dependent on extraction, more mining, more logging,
Hmm.
more fishing, and there's no place else to go. The human has reached the limit of its habitat. There's no place to grow bigger, but we can grow smarter. And so, if you look at the from the drawdown review, looking at they're looking at the accelerators to achieve drawdown. In other words, how to accelerate these solutions that exist, and we need to shape culture from extractivism, from more to better, 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 better.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with the story of stuff.
No, that
Oh,
is a
okay.
story of stuff.
Story of stuff. It's I think Annie Leonard started it. She's now the executive director of Greenpeace US, but she it just storyofstuff.com. It
Hmm.
started off as a 20-minute animated discourse of the political economy of consumerism.
Take this slide down and let's look at faces a bit.
Okay. Well,
You can
okay.
go back to it in a minute, but don't leave it up.
Okay. This is pause share. Or I'll stop share. Okay. I'll stop share and then we can.
Yeah. Okay.
So Annie Leonard, storyofstuff.com. But she has looked at, so it started off at this, it became a movement. Okay.
Hmm.
So it's
When
very,
was
very,
this?
hmm?
When was this?
It must have been at least 10 years ago.
Okay.
Okay. So it's become a movement. Now there's story of cap and trade, story of consumerism, story of plastics, of story of more. And she looks at it as a game, as a board game, where there's always rules. And if the objective of the game is to accumulate more, then that's what we'll do. We'll organize all our rules about accumulation. If we
Mhm.
organize the rules according to better, then we'll organize our activities around better. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with donut economics, Kate Rayworth.
I keep seeing reference to that, and I don't really understand it. And we don't have an image of it here to show, but can you explain it in words?
Sure, sure. I mean, she's got TED Talks. She's brilliant. I really love what she does. But just something blocked my screen here. Get out of there. Okay. Um, she trained as an economist because she thought that through economics, that's how you could solve many problems. And she became very, very, very disillusioned with classical economics, which is about growth of money, right? Not of consciousness, not of society, not of pleasure, but of money. And there's this. I think there's a huge, um, what should we say, confusion of associating wealth with money. We can be
Mhm.
wealthy in many, many ways and not have money. Anyway, so she looked at the whole concept of externalities. So
Yes.
economists say, okay, environment, well, that's an externality. Human suffering, that's an externality. Okay, but what she did was she developed an economic model of inclusion, so that the economy, to be successful, had to internalize the so-called environment, which is a misnomer in itself. It's as if the environment is around us rather than within us. But it is not an environment. It is, like, we talk about nature as if it's something separate from ourselves, which is
Mhm.
complete fabrication. So the natural world, no, we are the natural world. It is within us. We are within it. We are not a special species. In fact, we're not a terribly rational species. In fact, I'm sure that's the most irrational thought, to think that we're a rational species.
I quite agree. And that has a lot of
We're primates like
political
any.
implications too, unfortunately. But
That's
we
right.
don't need to go into that exactly
No,
now.
no. But anyway, so Kate Rayworth, Rawrth, look her up, developed she's English, so she spells donut with an OUGH. Uh, Donut economics that's the shape of the economy, where the externalities have been brought into the economic model, and the human activity, what people do to live, to be well, to thrive, on the inside have been brought in, so that you reduce the human suffering and you reduce planetary suffering into the model which allows thriving.
Hmm.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So if you're not familiar with it, it's easy to find. Kate's a wonderful speaker. If you want to get her on the show, um, so that's you're talking about growth and degrowth. Well, it's not one or the other. I know Charles Eisenstein has been talking about degrowth for a long time, and he talks about promoting the gift economy.
Oh, that's an interesting notion. But that a gift economy could still be physical things, stuff, if you will.
Yeah, it could be stuff, but although I was in a workshop with him in Toronto where he was talking about our internal gifts that
Mhm.
we have to recognize them.
Well,
Anyway,
I'm just very mindful that most of my friends actually are not into manufacturing physical things.
no.
I have almost no friends who actually are carpenters or plumbers or build cars or anything anymore. My friends work with words, or they work with musical notes, or
Mm-hmm.
they work with other people's psyche. They do psychotherapy, or they
Mm-hmm.
teach them yoga, or they lead trips out to smell the forest.
Mm-hmm.
They do
Absolutely.
various things that do not involve the manipulation of stuff,
Right.
but that involve the manipulation and the construction of idea structures or
Mm-hmm.
musical or artistic works and so
Right.
on.
Right.
So I
Although we're
see no
happy to
reason
have the
why
people
our
who.
our economy couldn't be based primarily on the exchange of goods and services, such as advice about where to invest your money, or how uh, to live more healthfully, etc.
No, we need some material things. Houses leak and need people to fix the leaks, and we need. Yes, we do need physical things, and that doesn't mean that we need to extract more and more from the earth, though.
Okay.
We can we can learn to live. Um, just even things like um, concrete, which is a huge contributor to global warming.
Mhm.
Just reading in an MIT bulletin this morning that there's a way of um, using, I believe it's light, using energy, electrical energy, rather than heating the lime to a huge temperature in order to get it down to the powder where it can be built and added with sand to make concrete, by using electrical energy, and then capturing the carbon um, that results from that. You can reduce the carbon imprint of
Oh,
right
so
from
this is a
nuclear.
new technology, is that right?
There are many new technologies, yes, and they're
Really?
happening all the time. Okay,
Mhm.
but
No,
that,
but regarding the cement production,
yeah,
really.
yeah.
Okay.
So they're happening. They're not yet at scale, and they're not.
Mhm.
So what Drawdown has done is they've limited themselves to what is already in existence and already being used and already proven in the literature. That doesn't include things like these new technologies that are improving. So if
Oh, well,
I
that's kind of disappointing because I was hoping that Drawdown would keep issuing new editions of their book, each new edition, including new technological discoveries since the last one. But if
Okay.
they're limiting themselves,
Well,
um,
they're not yet in the peer review literature. Okay, so that was their methodology was to say what is proven and what exists. So it's yes, there's much speculation, and it's not yet proven, but it's there. It's exciting. Many exciting things are happening. But I mean, the kelp farming has a huge potential.
yeah, explain that. Okay, where would you grow kelp, and what are the uses for it?
Have you ever had dulse?
Yeah, it tasted awful.
Well, if you were a New Brunswicker, you'd say it's delicious.
Maybe I didn't know how to cook it, but
You don't need to
it
eat it
wasn't
raw.
good.
You're just supposed to chew on it. Anyway,
But
kelp.
I do take in Japanese restaurants. In fact, when I have food delivered to me nowadays, which I often do because of COVID, I often order this. Was it wakame? It's
Yeah.
a
What kind of
seaweed
salad? Yeah,
salad.
that's
Yeah,
seaweed salad.
but
Okay.
that's not dulse. Anyway,
So
seaweed.
as a
I'm looking for some edible type of seaweed that doesn't taste awful.
well, wakame is very good. Uh, so you've got kelp is a type of seaweed. That um, floats in the ocean. Um, that is a huge absorber of that. It grows probably about 10 feet long. As you say, as I say, it floats near the surface. It's a nursery for fish, for sea
Mm.
animals, and it can be grown, it can be cultivated, it can be expanded. Unfortunately, it doesn't grow well in warm waters, and as the ocean warms, that makes it more difficult. But then there are new varieties that are being discovered that can thrive in warmer waters. Uh, so that's just one tiny example
Now,
of.
one time, no, let's play with kelp because I'm very interested. I remember I lived most of my life or half of my life in California, and I remember kelp washing up on the beaches. It was a problem because you had to go, somebody had to collect it and do something with it. But I'm not sure what good thing they could do with it. I've heard that they could make fuel or something out of it. What is the basic idea? Is if we could raise a lot more kelp, what would happen?
You'd be pulling carbon out of the ocean.
Okay, so why don't we raise a lot more kelp?
Uh, we are starting to.
Oh, and
There
so they take,
in
what
the
happens is that the kelp collects the CO2, and somebody comes and picks. It's a bulky, sloshy, and it's not a
when it's
convenient.
when it rots on the beach, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So they collect it, and what do they do with it? Bury it, or are they going to make some fertilizer out of it, or what?
You could make fertilizer out of it. It's biomass. You can do anything. Sure, absolutely. You can use it for fertilizer. You can use it for energy. You can use it for as biofuel. But this is all growing. It's like growing any vegetation. Any vegetation that thrives is a carbon sink. Okay, so you talk about land carbon sinks. How do we increase our sinks? This is one example of carbon.
Okay, but I'm interested in this. Now, why isn't it already covering all the oceans? If it could just grow by itself, why hasn't it done so? And what do we need to do to make it grow so that we can fish it out and hide it?
So carbon. I mean, kelp farming is they create a lattice. They create a framework for the kelp to grow in. So they
Oh,
are actually farming it. So
oh.
they are actually causing it to grow more abundantly. And I think
And what there must be money in it. So if they're doing this, somebody must make some financial gain from it. What could anybody get money for from
I'm
it?
since I'm not a kelp farmer, I can't tell you the answer to that.
Well,
But
yes,
farming,
but you got me interested. Now now
okay.
it's your job to get me out of this.
Well, look it up.
Okay.
I mean, let's. These we're talking about how do we? I think the issue, getting back to drawdown, is how do we accelerate these solutions? Okay,
Right. Exactly.
yeah. So I think we can. One solution, any one solution isn't enough. There's no magic bullet. I think we have to do them all.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm up for that. But you're right. The problem is, how do you get everybody orchestrated to work together and really give a good push for this? Because I get all these things coming at me in my inbox, people trying to tell me to do this or that, but it's just confetti. It isn't coordinated, and there's no way of integrating all of these different projects. Is your organization here in Toronto trying to uh, develop some sort of systematic campaign, or please organize me? I am your
Okay. So
follower.
let,
Now
let, let
lead.
me let me talk about Drawdown Toronto because we've got
Okay.
quite distracted. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just share my slides here and let's move down. Okay. To Drawdown Toronto. Okay. Can you see the screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So, okay. We got, okay. So our vision is to um, have Toronto being a flourishing, regenerative world. Okay. Healthy for all, children of all species for all time. And our mission is to have Toronto being a leader in drawdown in gas reduction. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this floating thing. Okay, so public education such as this, uh, connecting with Steve Easterbrook at the U of T School of the Environment, support youth, um, develop the movement and network building with of other networking with other drawdown organizations. Okay, we have in development what we call a local action portal, which is a way for all the climate action groups and initiatives to be able to um, display their wares in a sense so that we can create a movement that people will know what's going. Everyone can tap in to see what's going on and how they can accelerate their own work. We have a network of drawdowns in the GTA. So we just recently gave a talk to Durham Region Environmental Action Group. We have the City of Toronto. There's Lloyd Helferty in York Region has got drawdown going there. Caledon there's drawdown Caledon and I don't know about Halton or Hamilton at the moment. We had a food waste challenge. Food waste is really one of the biggest causes of global warming. We waste about 50% of the food that's produced. Some of it, much of it never leaves the farm because it's not pretty enough. So we're really a food waste challenge. It's mostly to the kids where you could go through and look at all the ways in which you waste food in your fridge or the way you're buying food, and it has a whole series of a checklist of things that, well, what did I do today? How much carbon did I save today? And so on. So there's the food waste challenge. I think it went on for a month in June, and we got a lot of interest that way. So
Hey,
it's
now I have a proposal. I would love for somebody to do some research on what do they call them? Best by dates, or best before dates.
that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
That
Now
is being done.
I have never ever believed in those things, and
That's
I
right.
even get angry. people,
right.
guests who come to my house will go through my fridge and they'll take a look at whatever date something is supposed to have expired, and they just throw it in the garbage immediately. They don't even open it. And I say, look, stupid, open it, smell it, taste it, and
Yeah,
if it doesn't taste right, then throw it out. But
I
don't
know.
believe whatever
I
those
know.
people put on that label, because
Yeah,
those guys don't know. How
They're-
could they possibly know when your food's going to go bad? You have
precisely.
to actually taste it. And they
Yeah.
say, oh, you get poisoned. If you eat something that's out of date, you'll get poisoned. Oh, the hell you will. People have lived billions of years, or millions of years, or 1,000 years anyway, thousands and thousands of years, and they got along fine. And only 50 years ago, they started putting these numbers on
know.
cans full of
I know.
food and telling us we have to throw things out that
I know.
without even tasting them or smelling them
Great.
or looking at them. If they have something green growing on it, throw it away. But
Exactly.
if it doesn't have anything green or slimy on it, then smell it. And if
Right.
it smells all right, then taste it.
Yeah.
And then
And-
if you don't like it, throw it away. But
And don't-
honestly,
and don't throw it away,
I get upset
compost it.
about this.
Yeah.
I think
Don't
it's
throw
ridiculous.
And don't throw it away, compost it.
That's a good idea. Good idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and fortunately in Toronto, we have the green bin program so that all of food waste can be composted, and you can go pick up the compost and put it in your garden.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so we're lucky that way. The challenge is to get apartment buildings to use the green bin material, and some are doing that, but not.
Well, one
many.
time I used, for about 8 or 10 years, I had a worm composter in my apartment.
Yeah,
And I would take my, I would keep my food in an airtight container
right.
until it got nasty. And then I would bury it in my worm composter.
And the worms will take care
And the
of it.
worms had a real feast. They just had
That's
a
right.
big party that night. You could
Exactly.
hear them pooping it up all night.
You're producing soil.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
stopped because when I needed to have helpers, and when my helpers came, they couldn't stand it. They had this idea that these worms were going to come down and eat them. Or
Well, there we go. So this is a culture shift. So one of the reasons I started this session with that little meditation was because we have to decolonize. We have to decolonize ourselves first, and a shift in culture to orient ourselves into the real world is part of that. So here's another. This is what we're doing. This is a very recent thing. I think we just have a few minutes left, so I'll go quickly here. We're coordinating with BC Drawdown and with the environment. What does IAA stand for? Anyway, it's refrigerants are a huge contributor to global warming. Not because there's a lot of it, but because the hydrofluorocarbons are many thousands of times more potent than carbon dioxide as greenhouse gases. So what we're doing is we're starting a citizen science initiative to go into the supermarkets, take a photo of the refrigerant. If you go to the website, you can see exactly how to do it. Take a photo of the refrigerant that they're using, and you can put them on a map of the of supermarkets around the continent of who's using what refrigerant, because there are green ones and there are bad ones, and basically shame the supermarkets. There's a Kigali amendment to the Montreal Protocol about greenhouse gas, about refrigerants, about CFCs and HCFCs, but the industry has been very slow at adopting it. So this is a citizen science. This is getting people involved. You talk about growing the movement and getting people aware of something that they can do, something tangible and something actionable that they can do.
Now, I think about 6 months or so ago, there was I read in the paper something. I think the U.S. has got a law coming in, but I was appalled because it's going to take 2 or 3 years for it to even take any real effect. And I think you're right. One time I remember the first time I read Drawdown, the most powerful influence on global warming that you could have, the one thing that has the most percentage income influence would be the refrigeration.
Yeah,
And nobody knew that. And
that's right.
they're not treating it as an emergency.
That's
And I
right.
think that we ought to really get on our high horse about that. So,
That's
but
right.
now the question, what I think is that anybody who buys a new fridge, and I don't, maybe they already have this law in some places, but I bet it's not very good. They should, whoever delivers your new fridge to you
Yeah.
should be required to take away the old one and take it to a
Yeah,
specific
I
place.
think they do that.
And do they know how to remove those gases in a safe way so that it doesn't leak? Because I think the worst would be to take your old air conditioner or something and take it to the city dump and just leave it.
Yeah, no, they can't do that. And I think I don't know if it's municipal or federal or provincial, but I know in Toronto they can't do that. They have to do it properly. But they still leak though. The existing fridges leak. They lose freon, and so they have to. Right now I think they're using carbon dioxide as the refrigerant.
Really?
Yeah,
I'd heard they were going to use ammonia or something. Is that right?
Ammonia. That's one. Yeah, hockey
Mhm.
rinks are mostly ammonia, but they're also using CO2. Anyway, I just wanted to say before we go that
Listen, don't worry about the time because I'm going to have to edit this down to an hour, but if we go 10 minutes over,
okay, well that's
it'll
fine.
work.
Okay, so then one thing we're doing, this is a new thing this summer, is we're working with youth there's a youth challenge international, and so we're working with a small group of youth in Toronto. And they have to produce an actionable climate action prototype that they can continue on. So we're going to be mentoring them. I won't go into details. On Monday, okay, we're talking about a challenge of land use, of creating land sinks. So Monday at 7 o'clock, we've got a challenge and promise of regenerative agriculture, and we'll be. So you talk about collaboration. We're working with Climate Fast, EcoJust Food Network, Green Thumbs, Growing Kids, National Farmers Union, Fridays for Future, and the Kids' Right to Know.
Excellent. Yeah.
So it's very youth oriented, but it's also very creating. The idea, is to create a coalition of action that governments cannot afford to ignore.
Okay. Would you please put this on our events listing? And I want to, every time you have a thing like this or a campaign going, I want to be able to have you use our website to promote it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Monday at 7.
All right. You put it on.
Yeah.
To save the world. To savetheworld.ca, and then you can put it up there and everybody will look at it. You see?
Okay.
All these millions of people who are following me.
And next week, I don't know if you know about the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty proposal.
No, how beautiful. What an idea.
Okay, so it's modeled after the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. But so by Tuesday at noon, it's coming to Toronto Council. It's going to be there on Wednesday. So we really need to get this passed. So
what is it? Explain it.
I can. Okay, I don't have the. Okay, it was here. Oh, here it is. Okay, the non-proliferation treaty is to treat fossil fuels, and it's an international, it's a global movement, but it's at the moment it's mostly cities that are taking it on. Vancouver was the first to adopt it.
Okay.
And so it requires adoption by the council to get off of fossil fuels and to electrify our transportation, our really the economy. It's keeping fossil fuels from growing. It's like we cannot afford to creating new fossil fuel production. I think we all know that, except the oil industry is continuing to expand, of course. And so it's
Well,
got
would
to
that
be,
cover things like pipelines, or what would it? I'm not sure what this new initiative would rule out that isn't already.
well,
You know,
pipelines by, you know how much of your tax money goes into supporting exploration for new fracking opportunities, for new oil production. We are subsidizing our destruction in a very big way.
right.
And
So this
so,
is largely a non-subsidy kind of initiative. Is that right?
well, more than non-subsidy, I think is to rejig the economy, to get our buses onto electric, to get our to increase really increasing electrification from renewable sources.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
we can be doing we can do so much more, right? The way our buildings are heated, the way the way we produce hot water, the way we get around, the way we um, air condition our houses. All of this is can be removed from fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm. All right. I'm
So
up for
that's an initiative. So if you write to your counselor by Tuesday at noon, we got a good chance of getting this passed at City Hall.
I just wonder, a treaty, that's a beautiful idea, but a treaty is a legally binding international instrument.
Correct.
Theoretically, it's legally binding. I'm not
Yeah.
sure that all the treaties in the world have actually been upheld scrupulously. But I don't know. I mean, once you sign a treaty for a city to promise to cut back, well, you still have an awful lot of specifics to fill in. It looks like that would be a treaty with a lot of blank spaces that would have to be individually filled in through specific political action to get each decision made, like switch from one kind of bus to another kind of fuel for the buses,
Well,
or whatever.
the city has already declared a climate emergency.
So how would it bring us really substantively closer to changes?
Well, they have to. It would be a commitment. They've committed themselves. If they've committed themselves to do this, then there are bylaws that they can act to say, okay, we need to get our food locally. If you go to our webinar on Monday, you'll see ways in which uh, that is happening. We need to. The crisis that we're in is a crisis of imagination.
Yeah.
If we can't imagine it, it won't happen.
It's also a crisis of coordination,
Of
having
imagining and
a
imagination.
coordination, imagination first. You have to be able to imagine what needs to be done, but then there has to be some system for bringing us all into some coordinated plan of action. Moving us from the imagination to the reality
That's right.
is a difficult thing.
Okay.
And when you have all the people in the world, and some of them are even afraid to take vaccines, they're so antiquated that they don't believe in evolution, or all the kind of crazy backward thinking that exists. How can we put people together in a coordinated project to get there as quickly as we need it? That's the challenge. Is political.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's political.
Yeah, and
That's
culture.
right.
You're right. It's
And
culture.
political culture. I don't know if you're familiar with the MIT group. In fact, Peter Senge, you talked about the Club of Rome, the Presidency Institute at MIT. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
No, elaborate, please.
Presidencing.org. Okay, so it was started by Peter Senge, who was one of the authors of the Limits to Growth in 1972, and Otto Scharmer, who was he did his PhD in Germany and came to work with Peter at MIT, and they formed what they called the Presencing Institute, which is it's in the
Can you
Sloan
turn this
School.
off and so I can see your face more? Turn
Sorry?
your screen share off.
Oh, it's off. Okay. Yeah, I will. Okay. I think that we've got that. Um, oh, look at I've got all these pretty pictures. Okay.
Yeah. I've
There's
read
the
this one.
solution.
This one down here, farming our way out of the crisis. Anyway, go ahead. Now,
Yeah, okay.
just good.
Anyway, I'm trying to.
Just cut
Oh,
off the
there,
screen
stop share.
share.
Okay. Okay.
That's it.
There we
Okay. Now I can see your face.
are. Okay. Presencing.org. Presencing with a C.
Okay.
It's being present and sensing. So what they've done is they brought together Western concepts of management with Eastern reflective practice, and they have evolved at what they call Theory U. You may have heard of it. The U is a paradigm of organizing thought. So it has to, it's the idea of the iceberg, where you look at all the world's problems, the ecological, the social, the spiritual, the psychological, all these issues which have been trying to be tackled as individual issues, creating silos, when in fact they are all just the visible parts of the same iceberg.
Mhm.
And the
That's the main purpose of To Save the World. Project
Okay.
Save the World is the recognition that at least 6 of these threats, that urgent threats
Right.
for disaster, they're all of them. You can't solve any one of them without addressing at least one of the others.
And that's exactly the drawdown message. But so anyway, so the iceberg, the lower part of the iceberg, is essentially it's about listening.
About what?
Listening.
Really? Okay.
Okay. So one aspect of it is levels of listening. I have a slide there that I've hidden, but so Theory U is a unifying principle. So at the top left of the U, you have what Sharma calls downloading, where you stay in your thought bubble, your echo bubble. You either download information to somebody else, or you accept information from an authority, and the power relationship remains the same. Okay, so that's then as you go down the left side of the U, you overcome this kind of internal voice of judgment, and you enter with an open mind. So open mind is a curiosity, is the ability to at least entertain disconfirming evidence to your worldview, and being able to engage with somebody else at an intellectual level, which is the basis of science. And then if you go down farther down the U and overcome this voice of cynicism, like no, it'll never work, and you go in with an open heart, which enables you to see the world through the eyes of the other, particularly the eyes of the periphery, of those who don't normally get a chance to speak.
Empathy.
Which is the basis of social science, right? Although I would go further and say not only the humans that don't have a voice, but actually the world that doesn't have a voice, the trees and the animals that don't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To be able to see the world through the eyes of a bird or the eyes of a tree. And then
That's real empathy. Yeah, I'm fascinated by the
Yeah.
importance of empathy. Yeah.
Right. Empathy, exactly. So from curiosity, empathy, and then farther down the U to the bottom of the U, you overcome this voice of fear, where you enter with an open will, being willing to let go of things that aren't working for you, of parts of your worldview that growth has to keep on going regardless of how much we extract, for instance. And that's where you enter what a state of presencing, which is a meditative state, or connecting with your source, the source of your creativity. Might call it spirit. You might call it just your reason for being, your purpose as an individual or purpose as an organization.
Mhm.
And from that, you can from letting go to letting come, new ways of thinking, being, acting, and where then you can crystallize these new ways through, and it is a very, at that, the base of the U is a very um, self-reflective spot. And then you can crystallize your new ideas and evolve prototypes of action, which you can act on quickly, get maximum information from, as Otto puts it, you fail early, fail often, and then that can be scaled up into a movement of change. So that's what he calls presencing. And then the opposite end of it is absencing, which is what you see in the dominant culture of fear, of dominance, of violence, of racism, and so on, and closing the mind and reinforcing the negativity. And so, as a paradigm, I think it works, and it can be applied in so many different levels. And if you look at the, um, the programs that they've put together globally, last year, in response to COVID, they were able to put together a 14-week program in 10 days that went to thousands and thousands of people around the world that were, they call it the Gaia journey, a global action and intention, or a global activity, intention, and action. It's an acronym, Gaia, the Earth goddess, and you can go to it. You can just go to presencing.org. You'll see all of this stuff on video. It's all free, and I was so engaged. You'd be in breakout rooms with people. Could be in Australia. It could be in Africa. It could be in Northern Europe or South America, all at the same time.
Wonderful.
It was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. So this is the
Thank you.
kind of power, and so they've been. So the reason I'm introducing this is because you said, how do we get from these ideas to the action? Well, it's through the heart,
Okay.
head, heart, and hand.
Yeah.
And if it is from the idea, from the head to the hand, it requires the heart, right? It requires the fire of compassion and of desire, and so that's that is the message. So
Thank you.
presencing.org, I think you'd really enjoy it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, you've brought me not only up to date, but into the future. So I'm glad to be a traveler to the future with you. It's an inspiring journey.
It's been fun.
Okay.
Not exactly what I expected I was going to be doing, but fun.
Well, we'll see what comes out at the other end because I have to edit it.
Okay.
Okay.